Hello everybody and welcome along to a brand new video where today I'm very happy to be able to bring you the news that we have a Series 11 soundtrack. It's coming, it's got a release date, it's got a track list, it's all happening. So yes, we're not even at the end of the series yet and it's kind of leaked, I guess would be the best way of putting it, but we do have details of the exact release date of a Series 11 soundtrack and the listing of every single track that's going to be on there, which I think is pretty fantastic news given that usually Series 9 we waited 2.5 years and Series 10 we are still waiting, sadly, which I'll come on to a bit more later. But it's quite exciting to kind of have with the new composer, the new sort of starts on the musical side of things, that they're really kind of getting on with it this time around and making sure to get the music straight out to all us fans. So that's really exciting. So yes, of course, the main reason you come here is to know when it's going to be released. And well, there's two parts to this answer because there is a website, MGM Distribution, which is a listing of the Doctor Who soundtracks that are going to be released essentially, with dates next to them or when they're going to come out. And there's two separate albums there, but the first album only has a single track in, which is called 13, and is 2 minutes and 22 seconds long, and is set to be released on December the 10th. What is significant about December the 10th? Well, that is the day after this week's Doctor Who series finale. So next Monday, there is seemingly going to be a single released called 13, which presumably is a way of kind of promoting the soundtrack to come. Is maybe related to episode 10, I don't know. Is 13 just a sort of mix of the 13th Doctor's theme? Is it some sort of track that's going to come out of the finale that might actually be a sort of vocal track? I remember there were rumours that Sia had done a song for Doctor Who. Maybe this is what it is, I don't know. No idea at all. But yeah, so we've got this part of this aspect of it. It's coming out next Monday. There will be a single released called 13, but I don't know what it's going to actually be. And then further to that, the actual soundtrack itself is set to be released on the 11th of January 2019, so only about 5 weeks or so from today, which is pretty exciting. It will be a full soundtrack, 41 tracks on it. I've totaled up the duration based on the times of the tracks as well, and it's roughly about 2.5 hours, which is pretty much on par with what we had from previous soundtracks as well. I know Series 8 and Series 9 were close to 3 hours, but generally 2.5 has been a good mark to sort of hit it at. And I'm overall pretty pleased with how it's looking, because I looked and it was only 41 tracks and I wasn't so sure, but the key thing is there's a lot of tracks with sort of longer suites. There's like 7, 8, 10-minute suites of music on this soundtrack. And so it does total up to a lovely, sort of long but huge range of music in this soundtrack to look forward to on the 11th of January. And now, of course, the other interesting thing is we have an actual track listing and duration alongside it. So what's my sort of analysis of what these tracks might be, whether I think they're going to be good or not? Should we have a look at the track list? So yes, you can see it all here, the 41 tracks of the Doctor Who Series 11 soundtrack all listed on here. The lovely titles have got durations as well, which is fantastic, so we're able to get a very good idea of what to expect from this soundtrack. And I think the sort of the interesting thing is that through this soundtrack, not all of it is actually in any particularly obvious order, shall we say. It's not done in episode order. It sort of starts like it's done in episode order. The first kind of, I think the first 8 tracks look like they're from The Woman Who Fell to Earth, as far as I can tell. And then the next sort of 4 or 5 look like they're from The Ghost Monument. And then suddenly we jump to the Saranga Conundrum, then to Kablam, then to the finale, then back to Rosa Parks, going via then a bit of Demons in the Punjab, Witchfinders. I think then at the end it takes you away. It just, for some reason, it seems to be rather all over the place, and I haven't quite worked out why that is yet. Possibly the reason is that Sagan wanted a soundtrack that sort of flows very nicely, has a very nice sort of, rather than the tracks kind of clashing a little bit when one ends and the next one begins, maybe trying to kind of merge the end of one track into the next, which is often done on musical albums. And obviously it's something quite tricky with Doctor Who, having such different styles of music to different episodes, trying to make it kind of sound nice transitioning from one track into the next. So maybe that's the reason it's been done. Other than that, I really wouldn't be too sure why they've chosen to go down this route of having sort of the soundtrack in essentially the wrong order, as far as I can tell. So yes, we've got the opening titles, which is fantastic. Wanted to hear that. Want to be able to hear that nice and clean. Then it looks like we've got about 7 tracks from The Woman Who Fell to Earth. Then maybe 5 or 6 from The Ghost Monument. Then it looks like there's 2 or 3 from the Saranga Conundrum there. A couple from Kablam, then possibly 3 or 4 from the Battle of Ransquat Av Coloss, the finale, given that 13 is put with these tracks from the finale, maybe suggests it is a song that's from the finale, because obviously it's going to be separate, as I said, and released as a single. Does it mean it's going to be part of that? I don't know. Then it looks like we've got 5 or 6 tracks from Rosa, which is really nice as well. I'm looking forward to hearing some of these from that, particularly Rosa's theme. That should be a really nice. That was really sort of one of the highlights, I think, musically of the series. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that in its clean soundtrack form. Then there's sort of 4 or so tracks from the Demons of the Punjab, but there's a nice, really long suite there, I Love You Nanny, at 8 minutes 19, which presumably is going to be a lovely sort of mix of that sort of Punjabi style music that we had throughout this story. I imagine it's kind of a suite of that sort of music, so I'm really, really looking forward to hearing that. And I'm really, really pleased that we've got the end credits on there as well. It's quite short, is my only worry, so it might kind of come in quite abruptly, unless it is literally playing off the back of I Love You Nanny, which is kind of like maybe the sort of suite up until that point, and then as it switches into the theme tune is when he has the end credits start. I don't know, but that's quite interesting, something to look forward to. Then it looks like we've got maybe 4 tracks there from, or three tracks I should say, from the Witchfinders, and then maybe those final 4 are from It Takes You Away, but I'm not quite sure about Me and My Mates. I don't remember really thinking that was anything to do with It Takes You Away. That might just be like a suite of the sort of various kind of action/companion themes that we've had during this series, because there's just been sort of various moments where themes have come up quite a lot in this series that are kind of not specifically tied to any specific scene or activity. It's more like the Doctor and the companion trying to work stuff out and things like that. So maybe that 10-minute suite there, which is fantastic, might be something to do with that, or it might be from an episode. I'm not quite sure. And then we've got the end credits as well, of course. But I'm quite intrigued to see that they've decided to split up the opening and the end credits rather than just turn it into a suite of the whole thing. So that'll be interesting to see, but I'm certainly looking forward to listening to a proper, official, clean version of that as well. In terms of what I'm most looking forward to, I'd say probably track number 7, The Doctor, which will be, that's the music from her sort of I'm the Doctor speech, which was fantastic in The Woman Who Fell to Earth. You really then have track 8 as well. You really need to get out those clothes. That's another nice variation of 13's theme. My Beautiful Ghost Monument as well, which is presumably the theme when she goes into the TARDIS for the first time, which was such a lovely piece of music, and I'm really, really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to hearing sort of more clean versions of some of the music from the Sarunga Conundrum, because it was very much electronic-y, pulsating, atmospheric music. So I'm interested to see if it kind of works on its own so well as it did within the episode. And given that we've got sort of 2 tracks comprising of about 14 minutes of music there, means we're going to have lots of interesting stuff to listen to. And I'm just interested to see in these longer suites what Segan's sort of chosen to actually put into it and how it kind of flows. Is it going to be kind of 3 bits of music chopped together, or is it actually going to flow nicely from one bit into the other, or is it just an 8-minute segment from within the episode? I'm very interested to see. Obviously we don't know what the music for the finale is going to be yet, and in some ways good, some ways bad. There's no sort of spoilers in the episode, in the track title, shall we say, for the finale. Ranskor Avkolos, The Shrine, Keep Your Faith, possibly 13 as well. None of those tracks really mean anything or give you any hints to the finale, I think, which is quite good. I wouldn't want to sort of get a massive spoiler on a leaked track listing. It would be rather unfortunate. Then these tracks from Rosa Parks, I said I'm really looking forward to. The Rosa Parks track 24, that should be fantastic, and hopefully some of the stuff towards the end of the episode as well should be still for a really good listen. I think all of the Demons of the Punjab stuff sounds really, really interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing King James's theme as well. That track 34 sounds really nice as well. And there's lots of good stuff in It Takes You Away as well, so those last few tracks sound really, really interesting. So I think overall there's just a lot to look forward to with this soundtrack. There's sort of quite a variety. Maybe there's not a sort of huge amount of it, but I think the kind of differences to maybe what they did with Murray Gold was there was a lot more kind of lots of short tracks for episodes rather than less tracks but longer suites of music. And I think I kind of prefer that sort of going down the longer suites, having a more flowing long piece of music than just 45-second tracks and then a minute-long track and then a 50-second track, and it just kind of really breaks it up and doesn't feel very nice to listen to so much. So I think that's quite a good way of doing things with this soundtrack. So yes, there's just a sort of rough breakdown of what the track listing looks like for the Series 11 soundtrack. As I said, it's about 2 hours and 33 minutes long, this soundtrack, so it's certainly going to be a nice kind of comprehensive selection of music from this series. Of course, is always going to be the way. There's going to be 1 or 2 tracks that you hoped would be in the soundtrack and it's not going to be there. we're just going to have to wait and see when we listen to it if there's anything obvious missing. Hopefully there's not too much of it, but usually that does happen sort of to some degree. And I'm also just looking forward to listening to this music in sort of an isolated form, because of course there's the unreleased music which I've been doing, the soundtracks, which are good, but don't give quite the same feel, particularly with the sort of more atmospheric feel to this music. It's been more difficult to isolate some of the tracks away from the sound effects and dialogue in these episodes. So I'm looking forward to just being able to listen to it on its own and sort of appreciating the sort of music, just purely the music itself. And hopefully it will kind of encourage people a bit more, because I know some people have been a little bit disappointed in the music so far for this series, that it just hasn't felt sort of that same bombastic, out there style that Murray Gold brought to the show. And I'm hoping that people will at least give this soundtrack a chance, listening to it in its proper isolated glory. And hopefully we'll get a bit more enjoyment from it, because I personally have been really enjoying it. I mean, yes, I really love Murray Gold, and maybe he would have done a different job for this series. I don't know if it would have been better or worse, but it would have been his style, which I know a lot of people liked. But I'm pleased that we've had a slightly new and different style, and I'm just looking forward to sort of hearing how this manifests itself in a full soundtrack. Now, of course, the one other sort of interesting thing, I guess, based off the back of this is what's going on with the Series 10 soundtrack. Because now that Series 11 is all set to be released, it kind of, I guess, for some people makes it seem like, are they ever actually going to release this Series 10 soundtrack? Because it just doesn't seem to be forthcoming. And I think the key thing is that Series 11 and this soundtrack is done by completely different people. It's a completely different project. It's done by a different composer, so it's very much sort of, they can do their own things for Series 11, whereas Series 10 is Murray Gold, it's silver screen. It's all done very, very differently. And now that Murray's left the show, I believe he's moving on to some new projects as well. It's very much just up to when he wants to release it, when he feels like he wants to get around to releasing it. And I am confident that at some point in the future we will get a Series 10 soundtrack. But it's entirely possible it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I really don't know how long it could be. It'll just be when Murray's got some spare time and is actually able to sit down with a guy called Jake Jackson at AS Studios, who always mixes the whole sort of soundtrack for him. They sit down together and choose out the best music, and then he kind of mixes it all into a nice sort of soundtrack feel for it. And it's just them having the opportunity to actually sit down and do that, which presumably it might not happen anytime soon. I really, really don't know. But only once that happens is we will have any chance of a Series 10 soundtrack coming. As I say, I'm sure it will happen, hopefully with Twice Upon a Time music as well. I do agree with a lot of people who thought that the music in Series 10 really, really was fantastic, and there's a lot of iconic pieces of music that I really, really want to hear in a soundtrack. And so I do have optimism that yes, it will come at some point. I'm just afraid the wait's probably going to be quite long. But there we go, guys. That's just about all the news I can bring you on the Series 11 soundtrack at the moment. So yes, just to recap, 10th of December, next Monday is when there will be a single called 13 released. And then on the 11th of January 2019, a full 41-track Series 11 soundtrack is going to be released. So yes, that's about it. What are you guys most looking forward to though? What track are you looking through that track listing? What is the one that you are most looking forward to? You think that could be my favourite of the series so far? Or is there any just pieces of music you've heard in episodes that you're hoping will end up being one of those tracks that is on the soundtrack? Do let me know down in the comments below. But other than that, guys, do remember to hit that like button down below, hit that subscribe button if you're new here, and I'll see you again very soon for another one. Goodbye.